Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. I want to give a response to the Munsters trailer that was released, I guess a couple days now at the time this video is released, but Rob Zombie's The Munsters film. So I'll put the time clip of whenever the actual response to that trailer starts up for you, but I did want to give a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to link a video in the top corner as well as put the link in the description below to a video I released, was it a year or 2 years ago? When it was first announced that Rob Zombie was going to be making this film. Before he'd even started it, it was just announced. And I was actually just happened to be talking about the Munsters, some of the remakes that they've done, specifically Mockingbird Lane. I just talked about that as part of a topic of Hollywood doesn't really know how to talk to fans. And then that announcement came out, so I spoke to that announcement as well. And in that video, I say, look, maybe it'll be good, but just because someone's a fan doesn't give us any reason to be excited. Kevin Smith has taught us that. And Rob Zombie, like, guys, it's fine. I'm a fan. Really, I'm going to do this right. That doesn't mean anything to us, prove it. So I'll put the link there. It had some interesting thoughts on that, some other remakes. Now the trailer's been released, and I've got some thoughts on it. And then I'm going to tell you after that some thoughts on why I think the Munsters as a property it doesn't have that sort of timeless relevance that the Addams Family does. And I don't mean that as a critique or pitting them against each other. In fact, I love them both, but all things considered, I probably prefer the Munsters. I mean that as a reason to push people to go back and watch that original Munsters series. It's that good. It's that interesting and still fun today because it's so relevant to the time. And if you understand that, it doesn't have a timeless nature to where it's relevant to theater goers today, for example, like the Addams Family was. Anyway, I'll get to that in a moment, but let's talk about the trailer. I will admit that the trailer did not look like the dumpster fire I was kind of secretly expecting it to be. So few things are good these days. I was impressed, by a lot of things in the trailer. Here's the thing, though. As I'm going to explain in a few moments, you just can't bring the Munsters back like the 90s did the Addams Family. You just can't bring it back and do it right and have it take on the same sort of cultural relevance like the Addams Family did. There's a generation that grew up, and when they think Addams Family, they think Angelica Houston, Christopher Lloyd, Christina Ricci, and so forth, just as the generation before them thought Sean Astin and Carolyn Jones and so forth. So that did kind of reboot itself in terms of cultural relevance. I don't think that this movie can even possibly be that for the Munsters. I'll explain why in a moment. But I do think it looks like it might be fun. Haven't really seen enough yet. It could be fun. That's not necessarily a justification to support something. In this case, I think it's fine. But, far too many people just going that, oh, what's wrong? It's fun. It's fun. Now what if it wasn't what it could have been? At least it's fun. That's the way you get crappy art. I don't think that's the case here. I'll explain that in a moment. But specific things reacting to in the trailer. Sherry Moon looks like she's doing just a very careful and pretty darn good imitation or impersonation of Yvonne DiCarlo's Lily Munster. So that's fine. That's good. If that's the route that's going to go, it's completely, that's workable. That's fine. The guy who's playing Grandpa sounds a couple times just like Al Lewis. There's a couple things he said or laughed or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, that's Al Lewis right there. A couple things he said didn't sound, I don't know who, whatever. The guy playing Herman, not a fan of, just from what I've seen of the trailer, I'm not a fan of his take on Herman. Some of the mannerisms he's got down pat, and that's great. In other areas, it looks like he's just trying to kind of make Herman Munster his own, which you could make an argument for if the other characters were doing that. But if you've got Sherry Moon Zombie doing just a spot-on impersonation of Lily Munster, and then you got the guy playing Herman just kind of not even trying to talk like Fred Gwynne or anything like that, that's a little, a bit of a disconnect there. So it looks like it could be, honestly, it just looks like a fan film. It looks like a fan film that might be fun. So, I'm definitely not going to, like I said, fingers crossed that it'll end up being like a Maverick kind of deal where it actually, hey, it doesn't have any agenda in it. It's actually just good old fun. And if you like the Munsters like I do, then even the remakes or whatever, as long as they're not disrespectful, insulting or whatever, They can be fun, a little element of the Munsters, but nothing's just going to touch that original Munster series. Again, you can't bring back the Munsters and do them right enough to have them reassert cultural relevance to the degree that the Addams Family did. So I hope the movie's good. It could be a little good Halloween fun. It's, I'm not looking for something that, can reestablish the Munsters, but it might be some fun. We'll see. I don't know. Here's why, though. Here's why I say that the Munsters will never be reborn into the same kind of cultural relevance like the Addams Family was in the 90s. The Munsters series was created as a response to the popularity of the Addams Family. The Addams Family, taken from the cartoons of Charles Addams in the day, those wonderful cartoons, it played on that sort of idea about the spooky, mysterious, and kooky whatever family down the street. Everybody has that mysterious or weird family down the street, or that kind of archetype. And then it went farther into like the spooky element of it, so these characters were sort of evoking, certain ideas of Halloween or certain monsters or whatever. Lurch was a very Frankenstein-like character, but wasn't Frankenstein himself, and so forth. So it was great. It was great for that. So Universal wanted to do the same, wanted to compete with that, and they figured, hey, we own the rights to the to the Universal monsters. That's what made it different, though. So when they made the Munsters, it wasn't just hey, look at that kooky family down the street. There were 3 things that made the Munsters unique and made it something special and even a little bit deeper in its own right. The first thing is that there's an element of satire to the original Munsters series. Because people knew the Universal Munsters archetypes. They knew Bela Lugosi's Dracula. They knew Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. They knew Dracula's daughter, the Wolfmen. These things were still in everybody's cultural memory. They were very popular. They were still the definitive archetypal version of Dracula when you say that word. So when they brought these characters, even if they're not calling Grandpa Dracula necessarily or calling Herman Frankenstein, his monster, they're calling him Herman or whatever, they're still very clearly those characters, or those a satire of those characters. Not a mean-spirited satire, a very loving satire, but you're taking those characters that were in were in horror films of the day, and now putting them in a sitcom situation. There's a level of satire immediately from the foundation there. That can't translate to today because, tragically, our culture, or your average moviegoer today, the average person on the street, especially the younger generations, have no idea who these Universal monsters are. They might have some trickle-down familiarity with the look of Frankenstein, but it's more likely traced back for them to something like Frankenberry or something like that than actual Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. They haven't seen these movies. They don't care about that. Dracula to them is some sexy BBC show, or whatever. That's if they remember the name at all. So you lose that satirical aspect of it. And you say, well, so what? Well, we'll get to that. Part 3, my reason 3 is going to come back around to that. Part 2 is that, or reason 2 rather, is that the Munsters did have an element of social commentary. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the show was ground up, built on that, and that's all it was. Today that would be the case. It would kind of, consume its whole identity or reason of being. But no, the Munsters did have this element because it was in the 60s, so you had the civil rights movement and all of that going on, and there was this element of the weird, the other, the different family down the street trying to coexist and going to like PTA meetings or whatever, Addams Family had some of that too, but the Munsters really played that up. And you had a lot of elements of that, and that was great, and it was about, coexisting and so forth, and it was fun. It was, again, some fun sort of satire and little barbs being thrown around and this and that, people kind of making light of a difficult situation. So that was an element of it that you really can't have today in the same way. Now, ideologues could certainly try to make a Munsters film or series about, accepting the LGBT community or the trans community or accepting, Muslim immigrants or whatever. But the problem is the idea of Muslim immigrants or whatever. It depends on where you live if that's really something affecting your everyday life. As much as the Pride movement would like you to think that every second person you see around you in a 10-foot radius is gay or trans, that's simply not the case. So it's not. It doesn't have as ubiquitous of a connection to be any kind of social commentary. And again, it shouldn't be all social commentary, but that was an undeniable element of the original series that made it fun and made it a little deeper. The trailer does seem to I don't know how much of the movie's going to be this, but the trailer mostly dwells on how they came to be a family, which that could be fun, neat little story to tell. But there was that one scene in the trailer where I guess they've come across their home on Mockingbird Lane now or whatever, and looks like maybe it's a neighbor or something. Halloween time, woman's dressed up as a witch, and they're saying hello or whatever, and she has that over the top reaction, where she's like, oh, faints at the sight of them. That was something commonly done in the original series. And it is, it's exaggerated for comedy, but the basic truth of that, I don't think really connects in today's culture anymore. I mean, freaks and weirdos are walking around with all kinds of, crazy looks, and our own culture is trying to tell us, oh, there is no normal, everything socially constructed, I mean, that's the culture that we live in today, so it doesn't have the same, the same appeal or the same impact, as the Munsters moving in next door, as it did in the 60s. So there's that issue as well. The third reason why the Munsters can never be reborn into the same cultural relevance as something like the Addams Family was is because the other appeal of the original Munsters film was its appeal to the team-up archetype. And by team-up, I don't mean heroes, a team of heroes or characters. I mean pre-established individual characters who existed in their own stories, and in their own stories that are accepted and celebrated and kind of seeped into the public consciousness, those characters suddenly teaming up in crossovers. And this is, these language today because of all the superhero movies. How exciting it is when there's finally an Avengers movie because you had individual Captain America, Iron Man, Thor movies, etc. So that was great, and we knew they existed in the comics as well. There's such an appeal to having pre-established solo characters suddenly team up in a story, and it really appeals to our need for mythology, because that was the ancient mythologies, Greece, Norse, Egyptian, whatever. We had the stories of these individual characters, and yet some would cross over into others. Heracles and Theseus, were cousins, and they, they would cross over into each other's tales. What makes the Jason and the Argonauts story so amazing is that you've got it's not just you got the wonderful story of Jason on quest for the Golden Fleece, but Heracles and Theseus are on his ship. Who else is I'm blanking on his name. Orpheus. Orpheus is on the ship. A lot of these heroes from Greek mythology are all teamed up together. The reason we have a need for that is because of the pedagogical function of an epic hero or of mythology. The pedagogical function is that these heroes, these stories, our myths, have to teach us not just how to come of age, not just how to go, obtain or flourish in a romantic relationship or whatever. A good epic hero tells us how to react or shows us how to react, mythologically speaking, at every stage of life. And when you have characters suddenly existing in the same universe, that's exciting to us because on some primal level, we get to draw more inspiration from them. Now we know it's not just, okay, here's Iron Man and the rules of his universe. Okay, now here's Captain America and the rules of his universe. Now Iron Man, distinctly as different as he is from Captain America, are going to butt heads and come together and have to learn how to coexist. That's a whole new level of inspiration, for us. And it is true that the Universal monsters were that sort of prototype. They were a real precursor to a shared universe. You had Frankenstein meets the Wolfman and things like that, and then with the Abbott and Costello movies, all of them in there. So it wasn't, a shared universe per se, but it was the precursor of that, and that was exciting. So when you have a show like The Munsters, even though, again, they're not, it's not supposed to be Bela Lugosi's literal Dracula to a point, sometimes, it plays fast and loose with that kind of thing. You do have that sense of a team up. It's like, it's from, in a satirical way, it's like, oh, isn't that fun? What if Frankenstein's monster married Dracula's daughter, and what if they had the Wolfman as a child? That's so fun, it does appeal to that sort of primal need for myth in us. The reason that really can't appeal to your average moviegoer, or especially like a younger generation today, is because, again, who's Dracula? Oh, Frankenstein, yeah, it was like a creature or something, or what? Wait, Dracula had a daughter? What? They have no connection, tragically, to these wonderful archetypal monsters anymore. Horror has developed into a different thing, and I don't know, it might be something every October, I do a special Halloween season on my channel, and we talk about either archetypes or are the Universal Monster movies, or we look at, certain ways that these things affect our culture. Maybe I'll do something like that again. But yeah, that's not going to happen. That can't happen today. So some of the Munster remakes were a lot of fun, but none of them ever touched or even existed in its own space as with as much appeal as say the Addams Family films did compared to the old Addams Family show, right? I mean, you can't say, one's better than the other. I mean, you're going to have your preferences or whatever, but no one can say, well, the Addams Family movie was fun, but it'll never be what the appeal of the first series was, because that Addams Family, those movies had their own huge appeal. None of the Munsters attempts at remaking, even though some of the really good, like TV movies or whatever, or attempts at series, Edward Herman and so forth, those never existed on the same level as the original series. And that's not to disparage the Munsters at all. In fact, it's to encourage people to go back and watch that original series and see how amazing it really was. Yeah, enjoy whatever remake or whatever you find value in, but nothing's going to touch that original series for reasons, and go back and enjoy it. That's the best case scenario from Rob Zombie's Munsters, this movie. Of course, those of us who love the Munsters or know the Universal Monsters archetypes and stuff like that are going to get more out of it than your average moviegoer, but your average moviegoer isn't, going to understand a lot of this, if they can even make it through the movie. It'd be wonderful if this could point them back to the original Munsters. That's wishful thinking, though, right? I teach the younger generation. I know a lot of Gen Zers. I know that there are exceptions, but I mean, black and white, that doesn't slap. Can't go watch that. It's just it's tragedy, tragic times that we live in. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on the Munsters and why the cultural appeal of it all, as well as a little response to the trailer. I hope it's good. I certainly am not going to be, so excited for it and supporting it every moment until I can finally go see it on opening day, because once again, those days are gone. Hollywood does not deserve that. No film from Hollywood deserves that. You let it earn you giving it a chance. And you let it earn you giving it a chance by continuing to put out good trailers, a little bit more information, everything's good, the people behind it are treating the fans well, and then when it comes out, if reviews and if people that you trust, tell you, hey, it's like, say, a Maverick or something that's no agendas and really does just kind of try to respect the characters and the story as much as it can, then you give it a chance. But that's all for now. I've talked enough. I'll be back for more. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.